Welcome to this CAPTIVATE session presented by the Contemporary Archive Project and supported by the National Arts Council. I'm Rachel Baasch, this session's host, in conversation with Niamh Walsh-Vorster as she presents The Politics of Seeing, Intimacy and the Photographic Gaze. Okay, thanks so much everybody for joining us. My name is Rachel Baasch and I'm going to be hosting this evening's CAPTIVATE session. I am a researcher, independent researcher and cultural producer based in Durban. My background is in art history and visual culture, as well as in fine art practice. At the moment, I'm a research associate in the Geopolitics and the Arts of Africa research program. And as I mentioned, and I do independent consulting work. So our guest this evening is also the one of the co-founders of the CAP initiative, which is quite exciting. So Niamh Walsh-Vorster, and her background is in journalism. So she has a Bachelor of Journalism from Rhodes University, and at the moment is pursuing an MA in Visual Arts at UJ. She's also an independent cultural producer, independent arts administrator, and a photographer or photo maker. And she also has been involved in she was a recipient of the Bassa Arts Journalism Award, which is really great, and facilitated the Power Talks through the Goethe program here in Durban as well. So I am going to hand over to Niamh, who will be doing her presentation, and then there will be an opportunity for some questions at the end of the presentation, and I will also be monitoring the chat. Thanks, everybody. Over to you.
Cool. Thanks, Rachel. Okay, so today I wanted to show a few snippets of several works I've done over the years. And I think the title that we chose... Oh, hello. Is that... Okay, I'll keep going. So the politics of seeing, intimacy and photographing, or the photographic gaze. So this is all to do with things that I'm interested in as a practitioner, and also the themes that have emerged in a lot of the work I've made. So I'll kind of start at the beginning. Next slide. Okay, so this was a work I made when I was still a student at Rhodes. It's one of my, I would say, arguably better bodies of work that I have. And it's about these two sisters in Grahamstown. They're quite, if you went to Rhodes during that period, you would know who they are. They kind of have this lure about them, and they're just quite photogenic. I don't know, there's an aesthetic they have that made me want to photograph them. So I got to know them, and Nadine, the one in the middle, is the person I followed the most. The next slide. So this was Nadine. I spent a lot of time going back and forth to their business and to their house. And yeah, they were really open. I liked that approach. This is what made me really fall in love with like in-depth, long form essays and photo stories. And yeah, I mean, they have quite the story. They're very independent. We connected on their father was also a Methodist minister. So there was this tie of growing up in a space of the church that we both resonated or all resonated with. But they do have a bit of a tough life. They lived in I don't know if you call it a trailer park in Rhodes, but on Grahamstown, Makanda now. And this is Nadine at home. So she openly smoked. She was just a really lovely person. And then these were the two sisters. So yeah, there's a lot more to this series. I'll go back. But this is where it kind of started for me. And I played a lot with black and white. I started it in color, but decided I preferred this kind of documentary style. So that was in 2013. Then, so that's now Rhodes. I've now graduated. This was my first work I made outside of university. It's in a community in the Strand in Western Cape. And this is not my best work, but it's quite a meaningful work for me. This was the community at the church that my mother worked at in the Strand in Rusthof Methodist Church. The woman in the corner, she worked as the secretary for the church. So this was a series for me to get to know the community, because I was also living in the Strand for a while, and it was quite an isolating experience. So this got me out of the house. And what's interesting about this series, so for example, this portrait of Noah, Rachi, he was the groundsman for the church, and he would also look after the manse, which is the church house where my mother lived. So all these relationships and these people have really amazing stories. A lot of these people have passed on, like this is Uncle Aubrey. And yeah, I mean, I played with color here because the personalities for me were colorful. Black and white would seem like a strange choice. But yeah, it's not my strongest. I was inspired a bit by Jodie Bieber, especially with
I'm
this.
just trying to make the
Editing.
sound go higher, but I can't
Hello,
get
Carol.
onto the...
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm trying to turn the sound up.
Okay, no problem, Carol.
Wait.
But that one, you see?
Carol, I'm just going to mute you, or do you want me to pause and wait for you?
Sorry.
It's fine. Okay, I'm just going to mute you.
I can't turn the sound up.
Oh, no. Okay, but I can hear you. It's nice to have you here.
Okay, I'll keep quiet.
Okay, no, welcome, Carol. Okay, so let's... Okay.
I think there's another mic might need to mute.
I've got it.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, I was talking about reference Jodie Bieber, very at that stage, really loved how she had done that Soweto project. And there was a few others, but definitely can't do it like her. But yeah, so this was just a meaningful project for me to get to know that community. And at the end of that project, I printed them and we had an exhibition in the church. I also exhibited at the Central Church in Cape Town at a First Thursday. It was quite fun. Yeah, so then this is more my kind of style of the church, black and white documentary. And then, oops, sorry. Let me go back. This was in the church. There's my mom. So this was a baptism. There was quite a lot of people. The woman in the middle is Felicity, also a really lovely congregation member. Yeah, so this is my kind of typical style, but this was me. I mean, I don't know most of these other people, but there were a few that I got to know and who, through making these portraits, created relationships with. Yeah, and then I also just wanted to try and tell the bigger story of their community. They have amazing musicians. Also, sports is quite a big thing in the Western Cape. I know Dylan Lades, if you know rugby, his mother's a congregation member here. So yeah, I mean, it was just a learning lesson for me. Okay. So that was in 2015. Then I moved back to Durban. I think I only lasted a year in the Strand. I didn't find work, so I had to come back. So then this series, Faith and Ambiguity, which is also, this is meant to be part of the CAP archive. It's also part of my thesis, this work. But it was produced during an incubator program at the Market Photo Workshop. So you spend a year, you have to produce a work at the end of it. And yeah, my first idea was terrible. And then someone made the suggestion of, you've got your own story. Why don't you photograph, the life of the church? It's something you seem to talk about a lot. So the context is that I grew up in the church with both parents as Methodist ministers. This is the back of my father. He was a bishop. both are retired now, but they're still very active in the church. And that man at the front is the current bishop, Linda Mandindi. And then this woman's head here that's obscuring is a Manyana woman. I think it's Linda's wife. I can't really remember. But yeah, so this series was all about church and my relationship to it, because I don't go to church, but I have a real respect for a lot of the work that I saw my parents do through the church. So I would visit churches that my parents worked at. So this is Manning Road Methodist Church in Durban. And on the right-hand side, on the right frame, I mean, those two figures are quite important people in my life. These are people that watched me grow up. The woman kind of at the arc of the door, that's a very close friend who's also a minister. Well, now she's a lecturer at UKZN. But yeah, I tried to find frames that were significant to me, but also showed my relationship to the church. A lot of them are very hidden angles, which has come up in comments about these images. And I suppose that's maybe representative of my distance with church, because I don't particularly enjoy going to church. I find it's not for me. So yeah, so that's, and then I tried to also show other aspects of church that aren't so overt. I mean, this is not even a church. This is the flat of a woman who worked for my father at the bishop's office, Auntie Hazel. Here she is here. And this is also quite a well-known, if you know this series or have seen my work, this one comes up a lot. And this is quite an infamous flat that she lives in, Sydenham Heights. Yeah, so this is Auntie Hazel or Hazel Stanley. She has this photo printed and framed. I think Carol Brown is in this chat, actually got this one framed for another exhibition. So yeah, so that's me. I wanted to just show people's everyday lives outside of the church. Here's some more frames. The one on the left is at Stanger Methodist Church, and the one on the right is at G2, Kwamashu, with a woman's manana walking. Yeah, so these are just maybe quieter moments, a bit more contemplative. I do like to avoid people, especially in church, because yeah, it can be a bit overwhelming. And yeah, it's kind of that thing of you have a camera. I like to hide. So yeah, these are some photos I made in a quieter moment. I'm wondering what's the next frame. Okay, so just, and another thing that has come up a lot in reflections for my studies is often in like colloquial terms, we will refer to like G2 as like a black church or Manning Road as a white church. So I am interested in these kind of post-apartheid, still racial segregated forms of community, even though the Methodist Church during apartheid tried to be a change maker and for transformation. So I find it, yeah, quite interesting that they themselves have struggled and still have forms of segregation, so to speak. Yeah, and then this was another image. This is my mother swimming. Water is also quite a big theme. I suppose it's symbolic of baptisms or calmness. But I wanted to show in more of the photos that I don't have in this presentation, I tried to frame just my parents at home or things that aren't typically church, because in my view, I don't imagine their work as ministers to be at the pulpit every Sunday. It's a lot more than that. So yeah, that was that series. Okay. Rachel, are we still good? Do you need me to?
Hey, I know, I think it's still going well. I've really enjoyed seeing the way in which you've used the window, the motif of the window or the symbol of the window. in a couple of the different series in different ways. So I think in your first series, the window features because you are documenting people within their homes, within intimate spaces. And then I think in the second, and that kind of recurs into your second series, where you've also have photographs of people, within their home. So it's kind of like, it's the window from the inside perspective. And then, of course, I really like this particular image where, your sort of subject is looking out, of the window, and you almost have the same view or the same perspective as she does. So I think that's quite an interesting sort of motif that recurs through the work, and I think that relates in quite an interesting way to the title. And we can chat a little bit more about that when you get towards the end of the presentation. Were you going to pick up now with the water section of the next image around water?
Okay. Well, yeah, you just stop me if I'm zooming too fast. Okay. Yeah, so hello, water project untitled. This is thanks to Tobani, who's here in the talk. So this was the first incubator project that we conducted or facilitated through CAP. And we decided as a collective, at the time it was just myself, Paolo, and Tobani, and we decided let's spend like 6 months or a year. I don't even think at that point we had a timeline, but we were like, let's focus on a theme. And because of Tobani's work with water, he was like, let's do water. So each of us went and found something with that theme and produced a body of work at the end of that non-time period. But I suppose for me, it did kind of resolve. And I do have a work that I need to just organize for the archive. So yeah, so I decided to go the route of looking at water in terms of how people engage with it, bodies of water. It can be either for sports, for fun, and for swimming, which is a big one for me personally. So I wanted to also add that aspect. So this was, the entry point was Midmar Mile, and Paolo and I both went to this one. And we photographed the day. And at that point, I hadn't swum the mile myself, but I was always very interested in doing that and achieving that that race. Yeah, so here's some more frames from it. I did go this year and I photographed, but I didn't manage to include them in this presentation. But yeah, and then also looking at festivals and how people, it's also this thing of access and leisure. And once again, I'm still interested in land and politics and who gets to enjoy things and how people use water differently. Either it's a resource for, for consumption, or it's for play. And, all festivals, they're quite glamorous, but there is this other side to water that not all people can enjoy it. But yeah. And this frame I found really interesting. These guys were singing Nkosi Sikelel, and it was getting other people excited, and they were calling each other comrades. And it was just that thing of sometimes, how whiteness in South Africa, from my reading and understanding of it, can sometimes isolate itself from Blackness and from the experience of the bigger South Africa. So it was just a moment that was nice, but there was these layers of we're still divided. And it's also that something that I've learned, and especially through, the church kind of lens, is whiteness often doesn't go outside of itself. People often have to come, if you want integration or transformation, it's often put onto, white people, in my opinion, don't participate as much into that transformation story. And then, I suppose just touching on transformation and being engaged and pushing oneself, I started to add self-portraiture. just because, you know, there's this current criticism of documentary, or I think importance, that you need to be willing to put the lens on yourself if you expect others, and to be vulnerable. So I started to do that. And the first frame on the left was in the Inanda Dam. There's no real meaning or tie to Inanda Dam. It was maybe just my first attempt at something to do with water. And at that stage, I still hadn't swum mid-mar, but was definitely, it was in my goals of life to do. I mean, I've only ended up doing it this year and last year. And this photo would have been made in 2022. But yeah, and then the middle image was made during that weekend of the floods, and I had no idea that that was when the floods were busy happening. I just went outside and was like, oh, it's raining. Let me take a sheet and just make a portrait of my back for my series. So it's quite poignant now looking back when it was the rain bomb. That's the day that I made that portrait. And then the one on the right, I had to remake the middle one because the file, I actually lost it. I don't have a high-res file. So for an exhibition, I needed to, remake it. But for me, it's also changed a lot of meaning in terms of time and place and my achievements. The first one hadn't swum the mile, second one had swum it. So yeah, starting to photograph myself and put myself into the series allows me for like a lot of other reflections. And I think it's important for photographers to do that. It's very difficult. You often need help. All of these pictures were made by some other, well, they held it. I just told them how to photograph it. Okay, and then let me go next. Right, and then this is kind of the latest series, also not really titled, but this is to do with my South African Afrikaans family's lineage. It's kind of it's a work that I don't know if I can go further with it because, as you'll see, it kind of does come to an end. But in 2024, an artist was asking me about my work, and then I was kind of giving them context about the Vorster side of my family and the complexities of who they are, their belief systems, family kind of differences and factions. But it is an interesting story, and it's still my story. So this first image is at Hartebeesport Dam. It's the other side of the dam. And this is a area that my father and his brothers, when they were kids, would go camping with on family trips. And, just that kind of revisiting. And I didn't know at the time that when I came back from this holiday, I then only later discovered, no, my father would go to Harties often. So I just found it really, I just really love this frame. So this is my grandmother, Mary, and my uncle's one of many tortoises and chickens and stuff that he has on his plot. So she was quite elderly. I mean, she was in her 90s, I think, when we went to go visit her last. So we hadn't seen her in a few years, and were very aware that she was quite fragile. I mean, she was mobile and she had her little thing that she would push along with, which is, I mean, she would find this quite funny. The not turtle, the tortoise, sorry. But her kind of compared to the slow tortoise. But she would still walk around the house with this. She may be slow, but she was sure. And and then her health kind of deteriorated, but I wanted to somehow document knowing that, yeah, I mean, she was really elderly, not doing well. She had gone to hospital, but every moment seemed pretty important. So this was maybe the last thing that I was able to buy her because, I mean, my uncle didn't have a car. He couldn't bring any of these items to her. So she needed shampoo and toothpaste and all of that stuff. So I ordered, I think it was Checkers 6060. And yeah, so that was just wanted to document everything. I was able to visit her, and this was just me and her. And I think, yeah, I mean, I spent quite a while, like 2 hours at the hospital. She was very frail, but she was very happy for me to have visited her. And yeah, I mean, I had my camera, she didn't mind. I mean, the funny thing is I used to always visit not without my camera, and my uncle would kind of chirp me and say, "Where's your camera? You're the photojournalist." So yeah, I think I kind of only started to carry it around and be intentional because I was sensitive, like I don't want to exploit or there's someone's fragility, and also someone who, yeah, I've only reconnected with after so many years. But yeah, I mean, it was all fine, and I think it was really important, and we were able to send these photos to like family overseas, and they were grateful, and yeah, but this just showed really the fragility and the state that she was in, and I mean, she I think only passed really months later, um, and yeah, and this is the last image that I have, and this is when these are her ashes. And this year we went to go and scatter her ashes next to my grandfather's in a place quite rural in Gauteng. I couldn't remember the name offhand, but there's just something really intimate. It's also that thing of who is this for? And yeah, for me, this is my work. This is my way of connecting. And I find it quite, yeah, I mean, this is the last like memorialization perhaps. And yeah, I think it's quite meaningful and it added a new kind of layer to the relationship. And then, yeah, and I just wanted to end with this image, this was the day of the scattering. So there's myself and then Terry, who is the minister at that church, and my father. I mean, it was kind of a ridiculous day as well. So that I mean, Terry's phone got stolen on that day whilst we were scattering the ashes. So there was all this absurdity kind of going on, and it was all, yeah, we were almost counseling her. So it was a bizarre day, but it almost was. It was fine. And yeah, and there's my father, who's a figure in most of my series, and yeah. So I think that's my whole presentation. I can go back to anything or you can ask questions. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Niamh. So I'll start off with just a few observations and questions, and then I will also keep checking the chat and also check to see if anybody else has questions. So as I was saying, I think there's quite an interesting use of the window, and that relates to this idea of the gaze and looking and practices of looking. And I think it's quite interesting to see an evolution in your work from the kind of observer. So, your first series, you're not in the images. There's no trace of you in the images anywhere. In both the first and the second series, The Faithful. And then within The Faithful, you do start to include your family. So you start to include your mother. So you start to see this kind of like introduction of the implication of the personal, where you're starting to bring yourself, you bring yourself into the image. And I think it's interesting to see how that's evolved. So, with that series, your photographs of yourself with swimming, you're not quite, you're in the image, but you're not making eye contact with the viewer. And then, at the end, that last photograph, I really like the way that you are captured in the reflection. So there's kind of these different layers where you've also got a reflection of a window in the image itself, and then there's it's quite clear that you are in that photograph taking a photograph. So it disrupts that illusion of the objective observer. We're very much aware that you're the photographer taking that photo. And I was wondering, if that, how that kind of evolution sort of came about, from, when you started off in your Bjorn days, and your interest in this, the idea of the gaze and the politics of looking. And I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit about that and speak to that a little bit.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I suppose I definitely can attribute to the critical thinking points that have happened as you just live your life and do your practice. So DCP, Durban Center for Photography, definitely shaped and almost radicalized my approach to photography and what I will do and won't do. So yeah, I mean, the typical photojournalist stuff, you're taught just go tell the story, get the captions. I mean, do take your time with it, which I think is a valuable thing to do. I do believe in long form storytelling, getting to know people, trying to represent people as best as you could. But as time goes on, I mean, there's still power dynamics and all of that stuff, and my positionality and gazes that anytime you photograph someone else happens. So just, yeah, but over time, maybe it influenced what I would photograph. So definitely deciding to make more intimate photos, I mean, of my family, of myself. And I mean, yeah, I mean, we can't read each other's minds. So it's interesting to see what we want to photograph and present, which I really do believe in. I remember at Rhodes, like that's the one quote somewhere was like, you should photograph things that you don't want people to know, something like that. And I really liked that because of course you don't need to like divulge your whole deep dark secrets, but I think that's what makes really strong and interesting work. So yeah, I guess the gaze and trying to understand what it means and that it is inherent no matter what work you make. Even in my own, like I've just even photographing my grandmother felt like there's a gaze there. I was having to frame it and compose an image. So yeah, but I guess there's just sensitivities, and maybe that's made how my style maybe has become a little bit, I don't want to say conservative, maybe considered. But yeah, I try to be very careful with how I like by, taking out people's faces and zooming in a bit. I mean, there was another image I contemplated like putting it in tonight, but it shows my dad's face like quite straight on. And I felt very protective, like I don't want to show his complete identity, even though you can see, I mean, he's quite recognizable, but yeah, there's these considerations with how we present others. So even then, like I have more of a protectiveness over my father, but then maybe in the other series, although they're quite dignified, they were very positive, and with like the faithful, those you definitely identify that community. Yeah, there's these different connections. I don't know if I answered what you were
No,
asking.
you have, absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. Not something you can have a wrong answer for.
Yeah.
So you just mentioned the faithful, and you were quite critical of that body of work when you were going through your presentation, and mentioned that, it's one of your weaker bodies of work. And I'd be quite interested to know from you why. Why do you feel that way?
I mean, yeah, I don't know. Look, everyone loved them, and that's really the important part. If your sitters like them, I'm always, yeah, that's an achievement. It's good. I think it's like people that I really like other photographers' work, especially when they do a series like this. I do enjoy like those very it's almost all the same, but the very direct. If I'd done all the culture straight on, um, but then maybe that would also have been a bit that's then putting like this weird artistic lens when these are just about the people. They're a bit more archival, very, yeah, I mean, that was the point, was to get to know people, not to use folks for a body of work. Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe I should be nicer about it. Uh, yeah.
So for this series, did your sitters choose, what they wanted in the image, or where they wanted to be seated for their photographs?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone just was like, come inside. Yes, I did brief, like, we're just going to do it in your lounge where you're comfortable. And everyone cleaned their houses for me, and everything was neat, and they prepped it, and everyone was very relaxed with how I was going to direct it, but definitely showed everyone. I mean, this lady, Auntie Muriel, she's also passed on, but she put herself next to a portrait of her late husband, and that was really important for her. Um, so yeah, I mean, people did direct their own space, but I also was there to help. Like, I think, yeah, if someone didn't know what to do, I'd be like, no, just sit and relax, and maybe put your hand like this. Yeah, so it was very collaborative, I guess, in that sense.
Interesting. And I'm also interested in your relationship to faith and to religion. As somebody who kind of grew up in a Methodist household, and this sort of idea of ambiguity that you sort of mentioned along the way. And I was wondering if you could speak a bit more to that and what you mean, about faith and ambiguity.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think the title, if I can start there, was these were reflections that when we had crit sessions, because that was part of the program, we had a curator come, and we'd often be looking at images, and they were like, you've got this ambiguity. The way I position myself is always, from a corner, kind of hiding, and the ambiguous came up, and essentially that, even in how I would talk about church, it's like, yeah, I mean, grew up in the church, but don't go to church. It's like this. I'm not claiming it, but I definitely see a lot of value in it, and I see what it's given to a lot of people. Um, so it's like a visual, but also personal, um, yeah, titling or wording, um, and representation, because that's what it is. My relationship with it is ambiguous. I really couldn't tell you much more. It's not that I mean, I don't sit and think about it that much. But I'm aware that I have a deep respect for it. The history of the church fascinates me. That side is more my personal interest, and I love, there's a lot of drama and gossip. It's very entertaining as well. So that community sense, I really enjoy that. Yeah, I suppose the community part. I mean, I went to youth when I was in school. I mean, a lot of people I work with now, I met them through youth, and none of them go to church, but that's just how I formed relationships, and it's definitely shaped how I engage with, you know, um, my world. Like, I was able to access and be friends with people outside of, the school contexts. It really broadened um, my perspectives, and yeah, I think it's offered me a lot more than just a Sunday service or Bible. I mean, I'm also terrible. Don't ask me Bible stories or verses. I'm the worst minister child. I don't know. I've repressed it all. I'm like, I don't have no clue. So yeah, I guess it's just the relationship to church is very different, because the assumption is that I am this type. And that's also what I was told growing up is, oh, you must be naughty, you're a minister's child. But no. So yeah.
Okay, that's really interesting. Um, so I'm going to hand over and see. I mean, I also do have a couple more questions that I can ask, but I do want to give somebody else an opportunity. So I don't know if anybody else would like to ask a question. I can check for hands, and you can unmute yourselves if you'd like to ask anything, or you can post it in the chat, and I can then read out the question. I love that ominous webinar Zoom call silence that sometimes happens when you ask somebody.
Yeah, I
Ask
can't
people.
see any chat, so I have no clue. I mean, I'm happy
Okay.
to. Oh, not
I
sure.
can see. I don't think anybody has their hand up.
Yeah, I
Lovely.
mean, happy to unpack more of stuff or.
Yeah, so you have one of the comments here is from Inkanyiso, and he's saying lovely work, and he has a question.
Ah, cool.
Let's go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello, everyone. First of all, lovely work. I just have one quick question. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you.
Cool. What's your primary camera?
Okay, cool. Yes, you know, I'm the worst photographer with equipment. So I currently use a Nikon D750, and my lens that I really just use is a 35mm. I have dropped my other ones. They don't work, so I'm not the best in taking care. Oh, what's happened there? Yeah, I'm not very good at looking after my equipment, but 35mm Nikon, used that brand most of since university. I used to have a D3100, which I think this series was made on, the Faith and Ambiguity, which is not like a fancy camera. It's quite entry level. Yeah, and this series was also 3100. This was with like a 18 to 55mm, very standard lenses. What else? I mean, I have other kind of toy cameras, one that I inherited or bought from Paolo Fuji, but I love my Nikon. I really like the bulkiness, and I feel like a proper photojournalist with that. And people seem to take me seriously with it, even though I'm like, this is not amazing. Yeah, so that's my equipment.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks. Does anybody else have a question?
I have a question, but it doesn't relate to the stuff that you showed us now, which is a very nice insight into, I feel like, side of your life that is not on Instagram, which is very cool. So thank you. Relating to your Instagram, I've been a big fan of your work for quite a while.
Oh, big fan of you, Jono.
I wanted to know the series of photos that you have that have been spread across your account, sort of South African found objects almost. Like there's one with a Koo Beans can with a lemon juice bottle inside it, and like the Gordon's gin bottle that's sort of propped up as a flower and that kind of stuff. Is there sort of a plan to expand that, or is it just as you go and find these objects, you snap them?
Wow, yeah. Oh, that's so cool. I mean, those were I was having fun. The one with like the ramen and stuff. It was a kind of, we were playing around. My friend from the States was visiting, and we were bored and we needed to do something with ourselves. So we thought, let's make well, the one friend calls it a trailer park ramen. So we also dreamt of making fun cookbook things, and those kind of projects didn't kick off. But yeah, the things with the set looking fun stuff really was just us being creative with no real point. There was that one where I did, I think, avocados. That was during lockdown. I think it was also Orm's school. They did like an open call for an online exhibition. And I was like, oh, let me just play with some food. So yeah, that's the context there. And I really love doing that kind of stuff. I definitely should do more of it. It's just a lot of fun. It's just so much work. I'm quite a lazy programmer.
Don't worry, hard relate.
Yeah. So yeah,
it's very cool. I like the way that it links to sort of some of your images of Durban's beachfront as well. Those kind of things that you would go and find in sort of like a spaza store, or the snacks that we take for granted, that we genuinely take for granted as South Africans, where we're like, oh, knickknacks, whatever.
Oh yeah.
And then there it's positioned in such a a way that like you're not familiar with, because normally when you see them in a spaza store or in a cafe on the corner, they're all like bunched together and forced into those trays. So it was just
Making
nice
it
to see sort
pretty.
of like a, yeah, that's it. That's it.
Making them cool. Well,
Cool.
thank you. Maybe
Cool.
I'll be inspired and pick it back
I-
up.
I hope so.
Okay,
Thank you.
cool. Challenge accepted. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks, Jonathan. I have a question here in the chat from DJ Shelwell. And firstly, they say, thanks for a very interesting and informative presentation and for sharing your story and amazing work. And then the question is, what are you currently working on and what do you feel drawn to documenting in the future?
I really want to do sports and rugby. I'm obsessed with like, we go to rugby a lot, the Sharks. I mean, there's Siya Kolisi and I think Toby, are you here? I'm waiting for you to take me to rugby again. But the dynamics in sports in this country are super interesting. So yeah, I really want to do that. And I would love to try with like medium format film. I have it, but as I said earlier, I'm kind of the laziest photographer, but if I don't make it, someone else will. So now that I've told you guys, it's who's gonna get to it first. But yeah, that's my next one. And I'm not really working on anything now. I'm trying to finish my thesis. But yeah, I mean, the last thing I did was with my grandmother, and I don't think I want to do anything further with that. Even with my father or the lineage. I think for me it's told, it's done. Yeah. So thanks for that question.
So just kind of coming to your research, do you think there's ways in which the work that you did within the context of the journalism qualification versus what you've done with your MA in visual arts, do you think that there's ways in which it's shifted your understanding of photography, and has there been a shift there?
I guess because the way my study is, I'm working with other photographers. So I'm working with Tobani, who's here, and Mandisa. And I think what it has done is talking about our photos, like this actual, like even CAPTIVATE session is really important. So in that way, that's what my study has done. It's made, and to talk to other photographers, because you can also kind of push them on their perspectives, and you might also offer an insight that they haven't realized. So talking to each other, these kinds of platforms, I really do think are important in contemporary photography. And yeah, I think we must keep doing it. So we should all just show each other our photos. Yeah.
Thanks. Does anybody else have any questions that they would like to ask? Toby says she has tickets for the rugby.
Okay. Great. Take my camera. Okay, thanks, Toby. Yeah.
I'm just having a look at some of my notes here to see what there's anything else that I wanted to ask you. Oh, so you did mention Jodie Bieber's work, and I wanted to ask if there's any other photographers that you are particularly drawn to or have informed your approach to photography.
Well, there's this American photographer I really love, especially with like this work with my gran. So I think her name is Melissa Spitz, but her handle is Nothing to Worry About. And she documents her mother who's like got bipolar and lots of mental health issues, and a lot of also like is very open with the difficulties of living with that and the stress and being a child who then had to grow up quite quickly, but she uses photography to tell that story. So she, for me, is really, I love how she's done it. I think it's really earnest. I would love to produce like her, or with that kind of sensibility and that honesty. I mean, it's a lot, it is quite, yeah, it is very honest. And as I've already expressed, like some elements I want to protect. So it would be hard to get to the stage that she's at. So she's a really big one. And trying to think of any. I mean, there's so many local people, South African photographers who just are amazing, but they're all, yeah, going over my head at this point. But the CAP Collective, I mean, really, Torbani's work, I'm constantly, even though I'm engaged with it all the time, but there's just so many layers of depth. There's the stuff with the barrels, and then with the people, with the water issues in his community, Mandisa. Yeah, so people that I know have really rich photography, and when you talk to them about it, it's sometimes, it's not old, it doesn't get old. I mean, it's 3 years, especially with those two photographers. I'm not sick of it, which is funny, because I get over my own photos very easily. Paolo's work, actually, his work of his family, I mean, when I think about the vulnerability of hospitals, I mean, one of my favorite images is when he with Adam and Sumaya. So yeah, I'm really inspired by a lot of the photographers I know. And I just think we need to all produce more so we can look at more photos. But yeah, I think that's really it. Jono is an amazing photographer who's here. But yeah, I think for my own practice, those are the guys that with documentary style, I really appreciate yeah, what they're doing.
So, I mean, out of these bodies of work, what would you say you are the happiest with, or the proudest of, and why? Which kind of body of work do you feel the kind of the best about, and what is it about that body of work that that you like?
I mean, the stuff with my gran, I think, is I'm happiest with, maybe, and I don't know if happy is the word, but I just think I pushed myself to make something that is very vulnerable, and if I had not, I would regret if I had not made these images. I think that's the bigger picture for me. The others, I think, can be like Faith and Ambiguity. I've seen it way too much. I'm over it, but it's good. I'm happy with it. I like the it's a video as well, so I like the video. The body of water one, the water project is still could be worked on. I don't know what else to do. I've seen other photographers go into it, and it's just like, wow. But I guess I can only push my angle and story, but it's just there's so many options and possibilities. It's not strong enough, in my opinion. So yeah, and the other ones, the Stain Sisters, I just love it. I think for looking at what I did at just starting out, I'm proud of it, and it is pretty. I mean, I'd love to know where they are now. Yeah, so yeah, I think, sorry, and this might go back to your previous question, but it does link to like bodies of work. Like, for example, with this series, I really enjoy what Sidel Willow-Smith is doing with her series Unsettled, and that looks at like settler colonialism, but she's broadened it to like overseas. But and it is contentious, that work. A lot of people are saying you're just platforming white voices again, and I do think, of course, all bodies of work have their blind spots or gaps or things you need to address. But I do find it a very interesting angle, and I would like to explore that more. I mean, we go camping a lot, and those spaces are odd. So maybe like subcultures, other ways of living in South Africa, and there are all these themes that exist. So yeah, that's the two questions made into one for you.
Great, thanks. Just checking to see, please put up hands or put your questions into the chat. Do we finish at 7?
Yes.
We close at 7? Okay, so we've got about 7, literally have about 7 minutes left.
Well, I'm happy to wrap up if you want, but yeah, you can.
I don't want to deprive people of that extra 7 minutes. So, and then my last kind of question that I want to ask you is related to your research, your thesis. And I know some of these works come into that, but do you mind elaborating a little bit about what your thesis is about in relation to photography? Because I think it is quite interesting in terms of having a bit of broader insight into your overall work?
Yeah, so it is related to CAP in a way. However, what I've done is it's not related as an organization, but so it's working with it's three photographers, myself, Tobani, and Mandisa, and our work is part of the CAP archive, and it's looking at how can we maybe better digital repositories, because typically and historically, museums are the keepers of artifacts, or they're presented in certain modes that can be a little bit linear, or, well, the word that comes up in my thesis a lot is, so it's unflattening the archive. So how do we present images like what you see on the screen, or unflatten them to be quite dynamic presentations of like the artifact, which is the photograph. And it's a co-collaborative study. So we've done sessions together and discussed our images in depth, conceptualized possibilities of how to unflatten. Intersectionality is a key framework and theory. So also understanding our identities in relation to our work, and also how our identities are not flat or linear or simple. And yeah, I suppose that process has been important because I can take those ideas and present them to an existing archive and see how we can better represent ourselves. Because typically you'll have a curator, they'll take your work and present it how they want to. So how do we work with, in the bigger scheme of things, our photographers to represent their work, but also that they know that their work might be read completely differently by someone. And I think there's this anecdote that comes up in the thesis, but also in our CAP chats. When we went to Isitumba, there's this picture Mandisa made of this, it's a medicine cabinet at the Muti market in KwaMai. And this child just went up and like named every single herb and what's it for, because his uncle was was a traditional healer. So even that kind of visual literacy and that understanding in certain contexts is important, because to another viewer, they may not read that. So how can we, use our platform to really kind of complicate, but also add like levels of nuance, and it's more than just he has a photo and a caption, because how it was made, the positionality, all of that is really, it's a much bigger picture, so if I can say it that way, of what's going on in a frame, because I was looking at this, I was standing there making this picture, framing it in a certain way, telling a certain story. So, so there's a lot of these layers, and playing with digital spaces and layering and gazing, how we look at a screen versus like in-person material exhibitions. So that's a lot of what it's about. I don't know if that made sense.
No, it does, definitely. I think it would be really nice, when you've completed the thesis, to host another session like this, where, you look not necessarily just at your own photography, but at, the three photographers together. I know some of them have each individually had their own webinars, but I think it could be quite interesting to, following the completion of the project, to have you do a presentation about that and about your research in relation to the kind of the CAP archive.
Yes, I'll get them to do that, no problem. I'm joking. Yeah, but that would be great. I do think their perspectives on that process is great. Yeah.
Okay, thanks everybody for joining us. We've got exactly 1 minute left, so if you have any, we're sure we can go over time, but if you have any burning questions that you would like to ask, or anything you'd like to put into the chat, please go ahead. can't wait for your book to be realized.
Oh.
Thank you so much.
One day.
Ah.
Thank you.
Wow.
Yes, one day is one day. Publishing will be our next big venture.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks.
Okay, thanks,
Yeah.
Niamh, and thanks so much for having me on this platform and giving me an opportunity to host your presentation. I really enjoyed it. And thanks so much to everybody for attending this session. I think it's really important that we do attend events like this. So thanks very much to everybody.